Alien abductees of Reddit or people who have claimed to see a UFO. What's your story? 1997 Colorado Springs. I was 8 years old. Playing in the sand volleyball court at the park down the street from my house. I was engrossed in my activity, burying my collection of Happy Meal toys in the sand, and then digging them back out. Repeat. I was looking down, but decided suddenly that I needed to look up, because the world around me had lost all sound. There was no longer any ambient noise. No traffic noise from the busy streets just a block over. No more dogs barking. No more birds chirping. I looked at the street that bordered the park, and that is when I saw it. It looked like a stealth bomber turned sideways, nose leading. One wing down toward the road and the other pointed up at the sky. Completely shiny black in color, as tall as a house. Shaped like an arrowhead. It was cruising the street at 3 miles per hour. Just gliding over the road. I watched it for maybe 20 seconds. As soon as it had passed behind some 2-story houses and out of my sight, I got my hearing back full force. I ran home with my piss-soaked pants and never spoke a word of it to anybody. Edit. Here is a quick sketch I made in all of my talented glory. I only lived in Cold Springs in 1997. I lived on Don Juan Court. So I guess the park I was playing in was called Franklin Park. Immediately after, I moved back to Phoenix just in time for the Phoenix lights. I occasionally suffer from sleep paralysis. It developed in my early 20s. And I've had the alien abduction dream. My dad and I love to watch shows about aliens. So I assume people who claim they were abducted had some form of sleep paralysis. It started with flashes of blue light, and I felt myself being lifted out of bed by the chest. I was blinded by a white light, and I could hear a loud mechanical whirring. When I woke up, I was sitting up in bed with my chest stuck out. My arms were holding me up. The experience was the most intense sleep paralysis dream I've ever had. I can see how someone else could have that dream. Panic. And tell everyone about it. I was on a wildfire just south of Dugway Proving Grounds in Utah. We were in fire rigs driving to the incident area. 4 trucks in close convoy. When we heard helicopters. 8 black military choppers escorted us in formation for like 10 miles. We assumed they were just doing drills and using us for fake target practice or something. A little while later we are parked and about to start hiking to the fire line when suddenly a thin column of smoke shoots probably about 200 feet into the sky. It was a good mile away, but the concussion was pretty significant when it hit us, and the noise was still ridiculously loud. We thought it was probably no big deal. We knew we were near a strike zone. A good 5 minutes later an aircraft like nothing I have ever seen flew by us at maybe 500 feet. It was flat black and sort of rectangular, but with fins and wells on the underside. It was moving pretty slow and was dead silent, so I have to assume it was some sort of stealth glider. It sounds ridiculous, but it immediately reminded me of a huge flying Batmobile. Time Burton era. After that some military personnel got on our radio frequency and instructed us to leave the area immediately. When our crew chief asked who it was and why they signed off, and the incident commander, the guy in charge of managing the entire situation, came on the radios and said we were evacuating the area. They sent us to a completely different fire about 100 miles to the south and never told us why, except that it was higher priority, which was bullshit. It was already out when we got there, and we just assisted crews in the mop-up operation. The thing that confuses me about this is that, if the army didn't want us to see that shit, or if it was dangerous, why didn't they keep us clear of the area in the first place? Either a communications breakdown, or they had an Auschwitz situation going down, and had to get us out of there without warning. These threads are like a Reddit campfire. I can't say for sure what happened to me that night, but here is what I know. I was driving home for the weekend from school at Indiana University. It takes me about 2 hours to get home, and I left Bloomington around 10 p.m. At exactly 10:53 I'm on a rural stretch of the 2-lane highway I take home. And I noticed what appeared to be flashing lights behind me. I thought, great, I'm getting pulled over. So I turned onto the next country road about a quarter mile from where I noticed the lights. As the car came to a stop and I started to open my glove box to get out my registration and proof of insurance, the lights suddenly disappeared and no car drove past. Now here is where the story takes a turn for the weird. And I'm sure you guys will think I'm just making it all up, because it really does seem like something straight out of a typical UFO movie or story. The electronics in my car started to go haywire. The radio was randomly changing stations, while the volume kept going up and down, while the dome light and headlights start to flicker and turn off and back on. This was at 10:56 p.m. I start thinking to myself that my battery must be failing, or else I have a short somewhere in the electric system of my car. So I lean down to pop the hood so I can take a look at the battery, and that is the last thing I remember doing. The next thing I know, I open my eyes and see nothing but the night sky full of bright stars. It was a cold night, and it seemed like I had never seen stars that bright in my life. I sat up and looked around, and I saw absolutely nothing. Nothing at all. I was in the middle of a field, surrounded by corn stalks left over from the recent harvest. As I started to come to my senses, I started to freak out. Where am I? Why the duck am I asleep in the middle of a field? Where the duck is my car? I got up and started walking toward the distant headlights I could see from a road about half a mile away. When I got to the nearest intersection, I looked at the signs which read 350N and 50W. I was half a mile away from my car, which was just right off the main road. I started walking toward the headlights I could see on the main road. I can't say how long it took me to walk the half mile, but it couldn't have been more than 10 or 15 minutes. When I arrived at my car, all the lights were out. My battery had died, which struck me as odd, because I couldn't have been gone for that long. I looked at my phone, which was sitting on the passenger seat, and the time was 2:17 a.m. Over 3 hours had passed since I turned off onto the side road for the flashing lights behind me. I remember sitting in my car completely dumbfounded, wondering what the hell had just happened to me. After about half an hour of just sitting there, I remembered that my battery was dead. So I got on the phone and called AAA to come out and give me a jump. It took about an hour for them to get out to me, since I was a good distance away from the nearest town, during which time I just sat in silence, running through the possible scenarios in my head concerning what had just happened. To this day, I couldn't tell you what really happened to me that night. All I know is I can't think of any plausible explanation as to why I woke up over half a mile away from my car in the middle of a cornfield more than 3 hours after I had stopped. I have only shared this story with one other person, my uncle. I'm sure people would either look at me like I'm crazy, or they would call bullshit on the whole story, and I can't blame them. If somebody came to me with a story like that so closely mirrors the stereotypical encounter story, I probably wouldn't believe them either. Edit. Corrected conflicting tenses. I've seen a couple of weird lights occasionally, and I have no recollection of being abducted. But when I was 12 or so, I felt something hard and round in my earlobe. I told everyone, and they said it was just an under the skin zit. Pretty normal for someone my age. But it was there for 6 months. Annoyed, I decided to do some self-surgery. I could feel it very near the surface, and poked a hole in my ear with a sterilized needle. Blood ducking everywhere. I could feel this thing, and I squeezed up towards the hole I just pierced. Out pops this tiny metal ball, maybe half the size of a BB. It was black metal, completely spherical, with an indentation around the center, and teeny tiny golf ball-like indentations. As I was rolling it around in my blood-covered pictures, it slipped, spun around the sink a couple of times, and fell down the drain. Thank you for watching. Like, share and check out other videos.